You know, we hear the word commodity thrown around all the time, especially when we're talking about markets, resources, all that stuff. But what if I told you that being a commodity isn't a permanent identity? We're going to explore the surprisingly temporary life of a good.
So, just for a second, think about it. When I say the word commodity, what's the first thing that pops into your head? I'm guessing it's probably things like gold or oil or wheat, right? The usual suspects. And look, you're not wrong, but you're definitely not seeing the whole picture either.
Because that common understanding, that a commodity is just a raw, natural resource, well, that's only half the story. The real definition is way more dynamic, and honestly, a lot more interesting.
So, let's get into the real definition. It's all about it being a temporary state. See, it's not so much about what a thing is, but about the state it happens to be in at a given moment.
Okay, here's the key. A commodity is simply any good that can be exchanged to serve the need of consumption. The two magic words there are exchanged and consumption. It's about what the good is doing, its function, not what it's physically made of.
And this leads us to the most crucial point of all. The character of a commodity is transitory. It's not a permanent state. Being a commodity is just a phase, It's a temporary stop on a much longer journey. It's not what the good is forever, it's just what it's doing right now.
Now, I know that might sound a little abstract, a little academic, so let's bring it down to earth with a super simple, everyday example to see this journey in action.
Think about your last trip to the grocery store. When an apple is sitting on that shelf, it's a commodity to the store owner. Their whole goal is to exchange it. When you put it in your cart, it's still in that exchange phase, right? But the second you get it home, put it on your plate, and you're about to eat it, poof, its life as a commodity is over. It has reached its final destination.
And this exact same rule applies pretty much everywhere. For raw materials like iron ore, it stops being a commodity the moment a manufacturer buys it to transform it into steel. For the food in your cart, it stops being a commodity when you're about to eat it. The principle is exactly the same no matter what we're talking about.
And this is the end of the line. A good becomes a consumption good when it's finally used up, when it's broken down, transformed, or, well, consumed. At that point, its journey of exchange is totally finished. It has fulfilled its purpose.
But wait, I bet a question is probably popping into your head right about now. What about money? Let's take a look at this very special case.
I mean, it makes sense, right? Money is constantly being exchanged. It seems to fit that first part of our definition perfectly. So, with this new understanding, you might be tempted to call money a commodity.
But the answer is a hard no. In fact, money is the classic exception that proves the rule. Let's break down exactly why.
Here's the thing. Money isn't exchanged to be consumed. It's simply a medium of exchange. Its entire job is to make it easier to trade all the actual commodities. It isn't transformed, it doesn't get used up in the process, it just moves from one person's pocket to the next.
So once you grasp this, it gives you a whole new way of looking at the world of goods. It really all just comes down to the phase an item is currently in.
So if you remember one thing, let it be this. Commodity isn't some permanent label we slap on things like gold or oil. It's just a temporary description of a good's role in the economic process, and it's a role that always ends with consumption. And that leaves us with a really fascinating thought to chew on. Once you realize that something as fundamental as a commodity is actually just a temporary state, it really makes you wonder what other fixed categories in business and economics are actually just phases in a much larger journey. What else should we be looking at not for what it is, but for where it's going?